you've had such great success in the trouser roles, in playing men in opera, and not very many women singers get that opportunity. Not that there aren't that many roles, and you've done so.
All of us lyric mezzos do.
What are your insights into being a man as a result of playing them on the operatic stage?
Do I have insights to being a man? I mean, the last I looked, Jeff. What exactly do you mean? What are my insights to being?
Well,
you mean, do I understand men better having played them on stage?
Yes.
For instance?
Just as a thought.
Okay. Well, you know, I went into these trouser roles, you know, most of the time I portray a teenager, you know, and which is one of the reasons I don't sing Carabino anymore.
But I always liked to look at them as sort of incarnations of the kind of boy I would have liked to have dated in high school.
There you go.
You know, I wanted them to be charming and sweet and loving and funny and, you know, all those things. And as I've gradually given up Carabino, and I'm not giving up Octavian quite yet, but a couple of them have gone by the wayside because, you know, the roles that are really for younger artists and more interesting for them. And I have realized that, you know, the male psyche is an endlessly fascinating topic. But these young boys are very kind of, I don't think about playing a boy when I'm playing them. I think about playing a kid. You know, and the physicality of it. I'm 6 feet tall. I grew up as a tomboy, climbing trees and playing sports. So all of that stuff comes very naturally to me, you know. I mean, the hard part for me was learning to walk in high heels. So, you know, playing a sort of sporty guy on stage, it actually is, I find a lot of fun. And, you know, one of my favorite moments in Rosenkavalier, which I hope that the next time I sing Octavian I can still do, is a moment in the first act when the sun starts to come up and their night of passion is coming to an end, and he runs over and he slams shut the curtains to keep the rising sun to keep the day from starting. And then he runs back and he jumps back in bed with her. And I usually try to sort of make that actual physical leap. Now, the leap is getting shorter and shorter by the year. I used to could do it from 5 feet away from the bed, but...
Now you sort of go over and take your slippers off.
Yeah, and I kind of climb up carefully. No. God willing, I'll still be able to do that. But.
Well, it's a thrill to watch you in the changes that are afforded the opportunity of a lyric mezzo who gets to be the boy and then gets to be the girl.
Well, that's part of the journey, you know, and it's also one of the pitfalls of having a lyric voice. You know, there are a lot of lyric sopranos who start out in the soubrette roles, you know, the Susannas, and what happens when Susannas grow up? You know, sometimes if their voices don't grow up accordingly, they get stuck. And, you know, I have a lot of friends who say, well, I can't be a 50-year-old Susanna. Right. But fortunately, as I've come through my mid-40s now, my voice has sort of developed in a way that allows me to take on some of the more mature characters, you know, the Carabinos and those, as I said before, Agno and those guys I'm putting away, but Sesto in La Clemenza di Tito is a sort of more mature. He's not a kid. He's a mature young man, and I'm singing that at the Met this spring in May. Certainly Octavian, certainly the composer in Ariadne still. But what's really nice is that I've been able to sort of ripen, if you will, into the characters like Iphigenie and like Didon and Les Troyens and the sort of more French, you know, heroines.
So did you manage it? Did you?
Well, oh, yeah, okay, I'll tell you. You want to know? You want to know the real scoop?
I want to know the story.
I'll tell you.
Tell me.
So when I was in my probably mid-30s, people were trying to get me to sing Carmen. My voice was always sitting higher, lyric, had a slender timbre, and my low notes were never my money notes. My high notes were my money notes. And I was always, you know, people always said, ah, you're a soprano. And I said, well, you know, I've been called worse. But no, that you know, I can be a soprano, I can be a mezzo, whatever you want to call me, but I'm not going to sacrifice those high notes just to get some trumped up low notes so I can sing Carmen. That's called vocal preservation. And I think that kind of thinking, along with my managers and my teacher, has kept me in a healthy place, which has allowed my voice to ripen naturally.
What happens then to singers who make less fortunate choices? Are you lucky because you're grounded, or because you've got managers who are in it for your long term?
Well, I think both.
Because you'd be a hell of a draw as Carmen. People would come.
Well, you know.
And you'd be wonderful.
Maybe I'll be a geriatric Carmen someday. When I have no more high notes. No, Carmen needs high notes too. And it's not that I don't have the notes. It's just that I always sort of thought that the color of my voice was not the color that I want to hear in Carmen. You know, I'm just as much of a fan of singing as anybody else, and I have certain expectations that I want to hear too. But you know, I've chosen my repertoire really carefully. I've never sung anything that was way outside my comfort zone. I've stretched myself a couple of times, but it was never anything that I thought would be dangerous. And you know, I think what happens is that, you know, lyric sopranos who have a yen to sing Aida run into problems. And the same thing can happen with mezzos who, you know, decide that they want to sing Carmen too early, or they want to go into, you know, Azucena or things like that. And you know, I guess it's for me, it's always been a question of repertoire.
Well, and you're incredibly grounded, and it's so important to know who you are, too.
Well, I know what I love, and I've always been very committed to singing music that I love. You know, when I started doing a lot of the contemporary operas, I sang The Great Gatsby. I sang a piece by Alexander Gur called Ariana a few years ago in London. That was a world premiere. And of course I sang, you know, Dead Man Walking, and I sang An American Tragedy. And people said, oh, you're such a proponent of new music. And I said, well, yes, I do support new music, but that still doesn't mean that I'll sing something I don't like. You know, if it doesn't appeal to me on a musical level, then you know, I don't care if it was written yesterday or 200 years ago. And if it doesn't fit my voice, you know, it's...
Have you embarked on something and then worked with it for a while and said, it looked good on the outside, now I'm inside it, not so good?
Yeah, but it was a Mozart role. It was Farnace in Mitridate. I sort of signed on to sing it one year in Salzburg, and then I started looking at it, and I thought, wow, this is a Marilyn Horne role. This is too low for me. And then they said, oh, well, then you should look at the other role, Sifare. And so I looked at that, and I thought, no, this is like 2 steps too high for me. So I just decided Mitridate was not my opera. But, you know, you have to, sometimes we're forced to make a decision in too short a time, and then you don't have time to sort of, you know, go through the role as carefully as you'd like, and you say yes before you should, and then you have to find yourself sort of backpedaling out of something. But it's better to do that than to get yourself in a situation where, you know, you could
hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's never good. And yet, it would seem to me that you have some luxury to prepare, because you work so far in advance. What's your schedule out to?
Oh, yeah.
To 09 to, well, I'm sorry, to
13, dear.
13, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we do work very, very far in advance, and it's not but not all opera companies book that far. I mean, there are some who are and orchestras who are booking into just next year, you know. So it depends on the company.
Right. How long does it take you to set up a season? Are you working ahead a little bit all the time?
All the time, yeah. In fact, I got an email from my manager the other day and said, oh, by the way, those Met performances in 2012, the dates have changed. And I thought, I never knew about those Met performances in 2012, but it's good that they still want me in 2012. You know, it's always percolating for 3, 4.